Former President Trump has just stated that if elected, he will end double taxation for American expats abroad. In this video, we're going to talk about what that means for you if you are currently an expat or if you're planning to move overseas at some point in the near future. And we're going to give you the lowdown on what the situation is now in terms of taxation and what it might look like under Trump's proposed plan.
Welcome to Entrepreneur Expat. This is
Justin.
And I'm Amanda. And on this channel, we talk all things living overseas. We talk about location independent businesses. We talk about making money online. We talk about managing your finances if you are an American or Canadian living in another country. So if that's something that you're interested in, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we have coming out on this channel. There is so much going on in the world right now that affects expats and so many people moving around from one country to the next that we're doing our best to keep up with all of it and bring you the information necessary for you to make the decisions you need to make. And as per usual, we have gifts for you. So the first is our Make Money From Anywhere guide, which you can find below, because if you're interested in living overseas, and also if you want to take advantage of some tax breaks that are available, you need to run your own business. So download our Make Money From Anywhere guide below. It'll show you the 5 skills that you need to make money from literally anywhere in the world. Does not matter what country you are in. These 5 skills will always make you money. And we have a very special announcement. Do you want to tell them about it? Because it was your idea.
Sure. So one of the things that we've been asked a lot lately by our clients and by other people in our community has been, you know what, guys, I know you work with a lot of 6- and 7-figure businesses. You help them grow, you help them expand, help them with their marketing and sales systems and everything else. But what about me? I'm still in the corporate world. I'm still looking to just get started and really need some support getting my first client. That's what a lot of people have been telling us. So we've actually come out with a brand new boot camp. It's going to be starting at the beginning of next month, and you can find all the information about it below this video. In that boot camp, we're going to talk specifically about how you can transfer your existing skill set, whether that's from the corporate world, from consulting, from whatever it is you've been doing so far up until this point, and transfer those skill sets into getting your first client in your own business. It's going to be a 4-week workshop, and we're going to teach you exactly how to do that.
Yeah, and specifically getting your first client online and a high-paying client so that you can more easily create a location-independent business and move overseas. We've decided we're only going to do this for 10 people because we're teaching it live. 2 of the spots are already gone, and we have not even promoted this yet. By the time this goes live, there will probably be more spots gone. So make sure to check the link below before we close registration. We do expect this to sell out, so move quickly.
So now let's jump into why this proposal by former President Trump is such a big deal. Candidates usually don't talk so much about what their plans are with laws and regulations and things for the over 6 million US citizens that are living abroad. So it looks like now the race is getting so tight that those votes are quite important. And by the way, if you are living abroad, make sure that you do vote, because you still have the right to do that. And there are definitely ways that you can vote from outside of the US. So make sure that you guys vote and exercise your constitutional right to do so. So as you know, taxes affect US citizens no matter where you live, because the US has citizenship-based taxation, which means that if you're a US citizen, even if you don't live in the United States, you still have to file and in most cases also pay taxes to the US government. The US is one of only 2 countries in the world that does this. The other one is Eritrea in Africa, and that is a dictatorship. So kind of funny.
Make of that what you will.
Most countries in the world do not tax their citizens no matter where they are. And Eritrea definitely does not have the power to come after their citizens living abroad. The U.S. certainly does, but that is a whole other conversation for sure.
So this topic really unites us as expats. We've said it multiple times that in the comments and even in the conversations that we have, if you're an American living abroad, it tends to run the gamut in terms of where people fall politically into the two-party system in the United States. I would also argue that most people living in other countries after a while feel like they don't fit into the two-party system in the United States after they've been abroad for a while. But this topic unites us because it doesn't matter if you're red or blue or conservative or liberal or not your box. You don't even have a box to check. It doesn't matter because if you are a citizen, you are still in the tax system. And this is actually quite controversial. So let's get into some of the reasons why this is a controversial topic for Americans that live overseas.
Some of the reasons that people give us for why this is so controversial and what we've researched is that, number one, there's a lot of debates as to whether or not this is actually even constitutional. Just because you were born somewhere, in our opinion, shouldn't mean that you now have to pay taxes there forever, no matter where you work or where you live or where you have your business. There's definitely also a lot of talk about this being government overreach, which it definitely may be. And one of the most important things from a practicality standpoint is that it causes a lot of administrative headaches for Americans living abroad. There's so much that you have to do. You need to file your tax returns in the US and file them in whatever country you're living in most cases. You also need to declare any bank accounts that you have overseas, especially if they're above a certain amount, cumulatively throughout the entire year. And frankly, because of how the U.S. does its taxation and all the regulations that it puts on U.S. citizens with those different types of paperwork and everything else, it also makes a lot of foreign banks a lot less likely to want to deal with U.S. citizens. They're probably some of the most discriminated against in terms of banking in the entire world. We've even interviewed an expat in France where she had to actually fight just to be given a bank account there in that country because the French banks just didn't want to deal with all of the U.S. bureaucracy. So it's a big administrative headache.
We also recently got an email from someone in the entrepreneur expat community. They have some money in Singapore. Singapore is known as being some of the safest banks in the world. And they're a U.S. citizen. They have some money in Singapore. And last week, they just got an email from their bank saying that they're going to start restricting services to U.S. citizens. And they wrote the email and they said, freedom is an illusion. You need to do a video about this. So it causes this whole double taxation and all the administrative headaches and all the regulation. It just causes a lot of issues, not just for the expats, but also if you're living in other countries and you have residencies in other countries, you need to have a bank account in that country in order to pay for certain things. We've talked about this before, and a lot of countries just don't want to deal with the regulation that comes with U.S. citizens, so they either don't want to work with U.S. citizens or they restrict what they do for U.S. citizens, or there's a lot of hoops to jump through if you are a U.S. citizen. And there are nonprofits over the years that have tried to, I guess, lobby to get rid of citizenship-based taxation.
Like the American citizens abroad?
Yeah. There are nonprofits that have lobbied to remove that. They've lobbied both parties in the United States, and they've lobbied presidential candidates and Congress. But to my knowledge, this is the first time it's actually made news, which means, again, either the race is very tight and somebody needs votes.
Well, also, I think they just see that so many people are leaving now.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big deal, too. I think they want people to ideally not leave because you're going to see what's happening in the U.S. now is very, very familiar to us, having parents that have fled communist countries where there's just this huge brain drain when the empire starts to fall. So.
Yeah, and actually one of the reasons a lot of you tell us that you want to move overseas is because of taxes. And I think this is something that we've heard a lot from expats as well, because you can reduce your tax bill by living in another country currently, and we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about what Trump means by all of this. But a lot of, not just expats, but Americans in general are starting to feel, and you see it all the time, especially in the last few weeks with all the hurricanes and storms we've been dealing with in the United States, where a lot of Americans are feeling, why am I paying into this tax system if we have people in Western North Carolina who have literally lost everything and they get $750 from FEMA, maybe.
That they can't even apply for because there was no internet for weeks.
But then we just sent Ukraine, Israel, and Lebanon a check without Congress having to go back into session. But then when American citizens need the money, it's either not there or it's not enough, or Congress needs to go back in session to give FEMA more money. So a lot of Americans, the expats have always kind of felt that way. They're like, why am I paying into this tax system? It's one of the reasons why a lot of them go overseas. It's one of the biggest reasons that we hear. But a lot of Americans within the United States are like, why am I paying taxes into this system? Because it's one of the highest tax countries in the world, and the money is not being used to help actual American citizens.
No, we have hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars going overseas right now. And the streets of LA and San Francisco and Chicago, most of the major cities in the country are just full of homelessness, drug addiction on the streets, tent cities, violence, crime.
We have 8 states that just got walloped by a natural disaster.
And according to FEMA, there wasn't enough money to even come close to lasting through the hurricane season. And they need Congress to go back in session, like you said, to just approve more money. And it's like, but we just wrote a check to Lebanon? What?
So a lot of Americans
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, a lot of Americans are feeling very frustrated by this, as you should. And one of the ways to pay less taxes into the system is to go abroad. But that only applies in certain circumstances. So what can people do now if they move abroad in order to reduce their taxes?
So obviously we're not tax or legal professionals. So this is not professional, legal, any sort of financial advice. This is just our opinion and what we've done. But there is something that we are personally taking advantage of called the foreign earned income exclusion, which allows you to exclude up to about $120,000 of income that you earn while living outside of the U.S. There are certain filters and criteria for this, one of which is that you have to, in most cases, be outside of the U.S. for 330 days per year. So that means that if you're in the U.S. for more than 30 days in a calendar year, then you do not qualify for it. There's other ways around that, like to qualify for what's called bona fide residence of a country, where you can prove intent to stay there and basically not plan on returning to the U.S. But it does get a little bit more tricky. You want to talk to your tax advisor about this. But the number one criteria for being able to benefit from that foreign earned income exclusion and potentially exclude, I think if you look at the total amount, $120K in income, you're probably talking $20,000 to $30,000 in taxes, maybe a little bit less. It really just depends on your tax bracket and everything else. But you can't exclude that if you're an employee. You actually have to, in almost all cases that I'm aware of, you have to have your own business to be able to do that. If you're working as an employee, typically not only are you paying federal taxes, but you're also paying taxes to whatever state that company has you registered as an employee in. So it's kind of a double whammy. You're not getting out of taxes and you're still working a job that you probably don't like. And so you're living in another country, but still having to pay all of your taxes to the US and then potentially be double taxed and pay additional tax in the country that you're living. So if you want to be able to take advantage of that foreign earned income exclusion, then you also need to have your own established business.
Yeah, and if you're just getting started on that, make sure to join us for the boot camp because, and for Americans living overseas, but you're working for maybe an American company or you're remote or you're working for a foreign company and they've sent you somewhere, or an American company and they've sent you somewhere. I actually did not know that the foreign earned income exclusion was basically only for people who ran businesses, and that if you're an employee, you are still paying up the wazoo in U.S. taxes, even if you are not living there. So whatever Trump is vowing to do probably affects you guys more than those of us who have businesses, because those of us who have businesses can at least take advantage of some tax credits that are available to us. Now, from my understanding, above $120,000, then you do pay some tax on that, correct?
Correct. And they're still charging you tax on any passive income that you make. So that's another thing to be aware of, is that if you're making passive income on real estate or on Bitcoin or on anything else, stocks, whatever, you're still paying taxes whether you live in the US or not.
Okay, so what is Donald Trump actually promising? Now that we've established, how Americans living overseas are currently taxed, and we've also talked about some of the debate around it, what is Donald Trump actually promising? Well, the truth is we have absolutely no idea because he did not go into specifics, which is typical politician BS. None of these people go into specifics. They make a bunch of promises, but they don't give any details. So in this case,
How convenient.
How convenient, right? So in this case, it could mean any number of things, and we're just going to go through what some of those options might be. But the truth is, because the tax system is a bit complicated and convoluted for the United States, we could go down many, many rabbit holes with this. So this is all speculation, what we're doing right now, and it's all for fun.
Yeah, and some of the examples that we've heard from different places we've done research, including the Wall Street Journal and Forbes and a few others, talk about things like getting rid of citizenship-based taxation, but that's altogether, which is pretty unlikely to pass Congress. Maybe increasing what you can actually deduct via the foreign earned income exclusion. A few people have been speculating about that. Maybe giving people more tax breaks based on the countries that they're in or tax treaties, or like Amanda said, it could mean literally anything because they never want to give us actual details.
Yeah, and if you're being taxed on worldwide income, which was how Americans are currently taxed, that means any kind of income that you earn. So maybe that could mean like, hey, okay, so we're going to give you more of a tax break on your passive income now because we weren't doing that before. It could mean that, right? It could mean, hey, on your investments, we're going to do this, but on the income you're earning from a business, we're going to do that. And then it might depend on what country you're in and what country we like and don't like. So it could literally go anywhere. So as of right now, it means absolutely nothing. We have no idea. However, some people are speculating the race is so tight that, there's anywhere from, depending on which organization you talk to, 5.5 million all the way up to 9 million Americans living overseas. I guess that's a voting block now. To your point, there's more Americans that are leaving because the internet has made it easier to do so. There's digital nomad visas. There's lots of shuffling going around in the world. So that voting block might be getting bigger, and somebody's trying to get to that voting block because no one's ever really talked to that voting block before. It
hasn't mattered as much as it does now.
It hasn't mattered. And then, however, if he does get elected, then, I guess we'll see what happens with this, if anything happens at all. So mostly it's just an interesting conversation to be having. It's interesting that this even came up as a topic of discussion to begin with, because it doesn't really happen in US politics that this topic comes up. We'll just have to see what happens. And in the meantime, we're just going to keep reporting on these things that affect expats as it comes up.
And supporting you guys to be able to leave the US if that's what you want to do, or at the very least have a location independent business set up so that you can live and work from anywhere. So if that's something that you're interested in, make sure that you do like this video. It helps us out a lot. And also subscribe so that you do not miss a single update. We're here to really support the expat community in creating the businesses and the lives of their dreams. So make sure you like and subscribe, and definitely check out that course down below. You're going to learn everything that you need to land your first high-paying client online.
Thank you so much for being here and giving us your time today, and we will catch you guys in the next one.